So, Power Rangers Dino Fury Season 2 Part 1 is now available on Netflix, and I just binged the entire show in one sitting. Yes, because I'm that crazy. Now, I'm a busy dude. I've got YouTube videos to make and Elden Ring to play, so I can't really do a review for each separate episode. So, what I'm going to do for this video is I'm going to review each episode in a quick format, and I'm going to have timestamps for each episode I talk about. So if you want to hear me talk about a particular episode, then jump to that timestamp. And yes, this video will contain spoilers because I already did a spoiler-free review, and this one's going to be the one where I talk about spoilers. So without any further ado, let's talk about Power Rangers Dino Fury Season 2 Part 1 Spoiler Edition. So Season 2 opens right away into the action with the Rangers hunting down Sporax. No time frame is really given between Season 1 and now, but you can assume it's been a couple of months. But in this episode we see that Void Knight is alive and only his armor was really damaged in that final battle. So he tells the bad guys, Mucus and Slifer, to get the Rangers fix-it key so he can repair his armor. Meanwhile, while this is all going on, you've got Amelia running Buzz Blast while Jade and Jayborg are on vacation. And this doesn't really become the main plotline of the show. This is just kind of a side piece while the Rangers try to figure out what the heck is going on and if Void Knight is alive, because they've got his saber, and what they plan on doing is luring out one of the bad guys so they can actually destroy him and see what exactly is going on. But that plan doesn't really go that well because Amelia gets distracted by work issues because she can't juggle work and her ranger duty, so the Rangers end up getting Void Knight's saber and their fix-it key stolen. So the episode ends with Void Knight repairing his armor, putting him back in the action once again. Now, I kind of wish they could have had the Void Knight is he dead or alive conspiracy going on a little bit longer, but one interesting thing to note, when Void Knight is not in his armor, he's in his leather getup, you get to see Void Knight what he wears casually, you could say, and what he has on him is this leather piece of suit, you could say, but he's also got a bunch of medals. So is Void Knight some kind of war hero from where he's originally from? And I kind of wish we got to find out where Void Knight was actually from, because they never tell us. We just know he's from a different alien world, and I kind of hope in the next batch of episodes, probably closer to the finale, we'll find out what Void Knight's home planet actually was. Is it Rafcon? Is it not Rafcon? Is it something else? But also in this episode, we find out that Zato is trying to get in contact with Rafcon, and we find out that it's near Free Suns. And this will play an important role later down the line in the next batch of not in the next batch of episodes, in episode 3, but you can tell that what happens in episode 3 and after is also going to play an important role in the next batch of episodes. So, let's talk about episode 2. So, episode 2, Wreckmate comes back with all the pirate puns he can do, and I was kind of disappointed where Wreckmate went a little bit in this episode and moving forward, because although he's back for good, I thought he would have a rivalry with Slifer moving forward, because they did have a bit of a competition during this episode who can defeat the most Rangers, and Wreckmate almost ends up winning. But in this episode, they also celebrate a Rafcon festival. I can't remember what it's called, it's something Rafcon, something Free Suns, I believe. But in this episode, we get to see 2 brand new original weapons, dinosaur nunchucks and the dinosaur bike with 3 wheels. But to build the bike in this episode, okay, this is something that confused me in this episode. So Zato and Ion both get a gift. The gift that Ion gets in this episode is a motorbike. Where did the others get the money to buy him an actual motorbike? I mean, how much is BuzzBlast paying them to buy a freaking motorcycle? Did they get it on, like, buy and sell for really cheap? I don't know, but it baffles me that these guys can afford a motorcycle. But in this episode, Ion ends up breaking the nunchucks, and after he got told not to use them. And although it's a basic lesson you teach kids not to touch something when you're told not to, and I do understand the target demographic for this show is kids, but this lesson that Ion learns, it felt so forced, but it is what it is. But it did lead to the freewheel dino bike being built. But before we got to the freewheel dino bike being built, we got a bit of a small clip show where we saw weapons from Samurai, Ninja Storm, MMPR and Wild Force being shown here. And yes, like most clip shows in this show, they were badly dubbed over. But at this point, I'm kind of used to Power Rangers moving forward. When they show old clips, they're going to be dubbed over because I don't think anyone kept the original masters for the audio, or they couldn't separate the audio tracks back in the day. It's a weird audio complicated thing that I'm sure someone who works on the show can explain it better than me, but I'm used to characters being dubbed over, and I kind of make it a game. How bad or how not close to the original character is this one going to sound? So I kind of make a game out of it, but either way, I do give them points for trying when doing this dubbing. But apart from that, the bike looks cool. I like its design. Okay, episode 3. So this episode did not go the way I thought it was going to go when I read the plot synopsis when it first dropped. And the whole concept of this episode is Slifer's got a device that can alter the Rangers' memories. And I thought, oh, this is just going to be like the Beast Morphers episode where the Rangers get tricked by the bad guys. And yeah, it's kind of like that, but what Slifer does is he kind of puts false memories in the Rangers' heads, and you don't even know what happens when the episode begins, because after Slifer tells Void Knight about his little amulet, it cuts to Amelia having a sore shoulder, and she doesn't know how she got a sore shoulder. She thought she slept on it funny, but later in the episode you find out that they were battling Sporax, and she got knocked into something trying to save Jade and Jayborg. So I do like the whole twist at the end where you find out that Slifer was tricking him the whole time in the episode, and I really did like that twist. But also in this episode you have Zato traveling into space to find Rafkon, and in this episode we find out that Rafkon isn't in the spot that we thought it would be, and it seems like it's missing. But what we are left with is a little beacon thing, and a message is left for Zato where it seems like that Rafkon may or may not be destroyed, and we don't really find out in any of the other episodes. But I feel like that plot line where the whole beacon was left for Zato and the mystery message, that's probably going to get explored in the next batch of episodes that get dropped on Netflix. So I'm really looking forward to that plot thing, or that plot thread, happening eventually later down the line. But also, I've got to give props to Campbell Cooley, who voices Slifer, because it sounds like that Campbell had a lot of fun as Slifer in this episode. So once again, Campbell killing it as Slifer, doing another amazing job. So, episode 4. This episode, we finally see the baby Packer Zord make their debut, and as everyone said, it's a very cute looking Zord, and the CGI just makes it even look more adorable. But in this episode, we also have Void Knight finally reviving his wife, but this is another Ion-focused episode where he learns a lesson about responsibility. But apart from that, we also learn some other stuff, like Zords can reproduce. How? Why? Alright then, but apart from that, I gotta admit, the new power-ups and the Zords are looking pretty cool. And this episode was a lot of fun because it moves the plot in a big way moving forward with Void Knight's wife finally revived. Alright, episode 5. So, Void Knight's wife, Santora, is finally awake, and we find out Void Knight's name is Tarek, or Tarek, however you want to pronounce it. But we find out that these two characters are not from Earth, and Void Knight, now that his wife is alive and well, he wants to leave Earth and get away from this place. But Santora has other ideas in mind. But also, this episode is an Izzy-focused episode, where we finally meet her mother, because the whole premise of this episode is Izzy is going to prom with Fern. But I have some small problems with this episode, and that's how they wrote Izzy. So, a lot of people tell me they're not a fan of Season 1, Episode 5 with Izzy, where Izzy was turned into a jerk because the plot had to make her a jerk because she was mostly focused on her training and stuff like that. And this episode we kind of get the same thing. So Izzy tells her mum she doesn't want to wear a dress, and then in the episode a dress arrives, and Izzy's response is, oh, my mum never listens to me, so she just throws it in the trash. She doesn't even think about maybe confronting her mother about it or saying, hey, I think you made a mistake. She just throws it in the trash. And then we find out there was a mix-up and the dress was meant for Fern, and Izzy's mum actually listened and got her a tux. So the whole Izzy being a jerk thing, it is a bit annoying because they kind of force it on the character to make her unlikable when the situation needs to so she can learn a lesson. But apart from that, it was a heartwarming moment that Izzy had with her mother, because you learned that Izzy's mum kind of tried making her get into girly stuff, but that's not Izzy's style because she's more of a tomboy. She's into sports and stuff like that. She's not into the girly stuff. But either way, it was a nice, heartwarming episode for Izzy, and I enjoyed it a lot. Alright, episode 6. So, in this episode, we have two big things happening in this episode. The birth of Void Queen, and Harvey reconnecting with his dad, and they patch that bond that was sort of severed in season 1, and Harvey's dad understands his passion for music and lets him pursue that as a career. But in this episode, we also learn that Void Knight wears his armor to maintain power and sort of strike fear into his minions. And we also get to see Santora's descent into madness in this episode before she becomes Void Queen. So, for everyone saying that Santora would become Void Queen in the show, you were correct. Your theories, your speculation, you were 100% correct on that. If I was wrong, I was wrong, but for those people who predicted it, you were right in the end, and I say congrats. But in this episode, we find out that Harvey's dad isn't the worst character in the show anymore. It's this metal band douchebag guy who does not get along with his band, and the dude's an arsehole character. Like, the dude takes the contender for the new arsehole character. But in this episode, we get the brand new Petra Freezing Zord and the return of Doomsnake. You remember that episode we saw for 1 second when Mick showed up? Well, that monster makes its grand return in this episode, so that was surprising to see, but I guess if they put the footage they use, they'll use it. But either way, like I said, in this episode we have the debut of Void Queen, and once Void Queen shows up on the scene, she kind of takes charge as the main villain moving forward, and we'll talk about that in future episodes. Alright, so now that Void Queen has finally made her grand appearance, I've got to talk about the suit, because I love this suit. I haven't seen any of Tokuja, but I looked up all the villains' costumes from Tokuja, and I gotta say, they all look really freaking amazing. And using the Madame Noir costume from Tokuja really helps suit the mood with Void Knight's base, with the whole aesthetic it's got going for it. Yeah, it does look a little bit strange when they do close-up and you get to see those big grey titties, which I am surprised they didn't try to cover up or censor a little bit, because you kind of see some weird cleavage action going on with how far apart they are. That is the actual mold from the actual suit, the Japanese version, but I guess they couldn't really alter it or change it. But it's a weird thing to point out, I know, but the suit is very sexy looking, I will say that. What am I talking about? So, the Tokuja suit. It works really well with Void Knight's base of operation with the whole chest piece they've got going on. And seeing how Madame Noir, that costume, or the Void Queen costume, is sort of this gothic costume going on, I think it blends in really well with the dark and gloomy lighting they've got going for Void Knight's base. And I think the suit, because it doesn't do a lot of fighting and stuff like that, it does work really well being a Tokuja costume in Dino Fury, and I'm glad we actually got to use more Tokuja costumes, because they look really freaking sweet. So, episode 7, and in this episode we learn that Void Queen is a crazy bitch and wants to hurt people, but it also turns out that Void Knight doesn't want to hurt anyone. And in this episode we kind of learn where Void Knight's moral code lies, because we find out that all he wanted to do was revive Santora and get off the planet. But because Santora has turned into Void Queen and become a crazy bitch, she just wants to hurt people. So you kind of see Void Knight, I'm going to get it mixed up later, but you kind of see Void Knight sort of switch sides and go rogue, where he runs away from teaming up with Void Queen and kind of does his own thing moving forward. But this episode is also an Ollie focused episode, and we also learned that Ollie was kind of always a dick and pushed people away because of his attitude. And in this episode, the character learns a lesson and teams up with Amelia to help save the day, because people are getting turned into the trees due to one of the monster's poison things that he's got going on. So, this episode was a lot of fun. You see Void Knight sort of switch sides, and Ollie has some interesting character growth, where we learn that the character was always a dick, but in this episode he comes around and he's sort of becoming a better person. So I'm excited to see where that character is going to go moving forward. But we got to talk about Void Knight, because Void Knight, there's always been the discussion, is Void Knight truly evil? Is he really a bad guy because he doesn't want to take over the world? He just wants to revive his wife. And seeing how Void Knight doesn't want to hurt anyone or damage the earth or get revenge on the human race, you can kind of see that Void Knight is a good guy all along. And what he was doing, yeah, he was sort of trying to get the Sporax to revive someone he cared about, and we're going to talk about that later, probably in episode 9, but Void Knight's intentions weren't truly that evil. I mean, he had to use the Sporax, which were violent creatures, but he had to do what he had to do to revive the person he loved, and what happened was that backfired on him, because apparently she was the one who was bent on revenge and not Void Knight. Void Knight had pure intentions the whole time, and we'll definitely be talking a lot more about Void Knight in episode 8 and episode 9. Okay, episode 8. This episode was probably my least favorite episode of the batch that was dropped on Netflix. Why? Well, it's the whole main Ranger plot. So, you've got two things going on right now. The Void Knight stuff, where Void Knight's on the run from Void Queen, and seeing what Void Knight is wearing, or what Tarek is wearing, the dude looks like he escaped the dungeon from fucking Pulp Fiction. I mean, if he wants to stay incognito, why is he dressing like that in public? I mean, that's just going to draw more attention to yourself. Yeah, I get he's wearing purple and he's got the whole night get up, but why is he dressing like a Kingstar? That confused me, but that's going to get him discovered faster probably. But there's also the subplot or the Ranger plot where someone's trying to hack Buzz Blast because they want to get their own TV show. I didn't care much about it. It seemed like it was dragging down the main story because it's a kid that wants attention and they want to get online famous. But Ion is the one to teach the kid a lesson in the end, and I really like the lesson that Ion taught the kid where he says, hey, since you took Buzz Blast, I'm going to take your bike, and you won't get your bike back until you fix your problem. And that helps the kid teach a lesson in the end. So it's cool to see Ion actually be the voice of reason in this episode, because I wasn't really predicting that. And also, Void Knight is now helping the Rangers. And if you predicted Void Knight redeeming himself and helping out the Rangers and turning good, well, you were right. Congrats. You got that theory right, you got that prediction right, and give yourself a pat on the back. Also, one thing that was really cool about this episode, we got to see Jane's actress, Kira Joseph's son. We get to see her tap dancing skills put on screen, and I gotta say, from seeing her tap dance on Instagram and seeing her tap dance on Dino Fury, it's really cool, and I'm glad she was actually finally able to do it in an episode. Check her out on social media. She posts some really cool tap dancing stuff. I highly recommend checking it out. Alright, this is the big one. Episode 9. This is where Zato gets the Dino Knight power-up. And this is where we're introduced to Snag Eye as well. And I was always wondering how they handle this episode, because although I haven't seen Ryu's Soldier all the way through, I've kind of heard about the beats and the plots for this episode, how the Red Ranger gets the power-up in this episode, and that is the death of another character that was Void Knight, or the Void Knight's counterpart. And how they handle it in this episode is redeeming Void Knight by helping him fight alongside the Rangers. But also in this episode, you have Zato having trust issues with Void Knight, where he doesn't completely trust him. And I gotta say, Russell Curry's performance as Zato, where he lashes out at Void Knight, was some pretty good acting, and you can feel the anger coming out of him. So I gotta give props to Russell as his performance as Zato, when he's just shouting at Void Knight, saying that he doesn't believe him and he doesn't think he's changed. And then in the end of the episode, he learns that Void Knight actually did change. But in this episode, Snag Eye is introduced and destroyed in the same episode, because we get the power-up of the Dino Knight armor. That was a really cool fight scene from the Sentai footage they used. That was pretty cool. There's some things I think they skipped, and that is Zato riding on the T-Rex sword, but that's because they don't have the Tiramigo suit in this adaptation of Power Rangers, but it is what it is. I thought they'd maybe use it where he gets to ride on it like a miniature sword, but they don't use that. But either way, I enjoyed this episode, and seeing how Zato gets the Dino Knight morpher, because apparently Void Knight found it and he used that morpher to make his armor and his shield. That was an interesting concept. I didn't think they'd go with it with that, because I thought that key was lost forever, and they made it seem like that Void Knight's armor was sort of a totally different concept. But it's cool to see an answer to where Void Knight's armor came from, and apparently it was the power-up that Zato is going to be using moving forward. But Void Knight redeems himself, and before he can tell the Rangers what is going on, he is kidnapped by Void Queen, and we don't see him ever again. Well, we do, but he becomes a totally different character. But Tarek, Void Knight, he's redeemed, but before he's fully redeemed, he's kidnapped by the bad guys so he can get turned evil fully. And that's where the episode ends. But yeah, episode 9, probably the strongest episode out of all these episodes that were put online. Alright, episode 10. This episode was probably my other least favorite episode out of the bunch. This was an Izzy and Ion focused episode where they go bike riding in the woods, and Ion accidentally makes Izzy break her bike and she gets mad, and then while in the woods they find a bunch of random stuff in the forest, one of them being a bunch of money. And because they find a bunch of money, the whole lesson in this episode is Ion buys a bunch of stuff to make him feel better, but I'm surprised they didn't go with the moral lesson saying Ion found a bunch of money, maybe he should return it to someone who might know what's going on with it, but because it was in an abandoned Area 62 suitcase, I guess it was theirs for the taking. I don't know. But this episode was kind of the weakest one for me. I didn't really care much for it. One interesting thing we had going for it in this episode was that we got to see the Primal Ultra Megazord, and we find out that in a flashback, when the whole Megazord blew up that made Ion get separated from the team, was because the Primal Ultra Megazord, oh that is a mouthful to say, was too strong for the other Rangers to handle. So in this episode they use the Freezing Zord to find a solution, and that way they can use the brand new Megazord combination. So yeah, there's not much to say with this episode. I did like the heartwarming moment that Ion had where he was just giving all his possessions to people to make him happy, so that was a nice little moment. But apart from that, it kind of felt one of the more weaker episodes. I guess it was more of a breather episode with all the crazy action stuff we've had in the past couple of episodes, but that's understood. But then they threw in the whole Primal Zord, Ultra Zord thing, and then I got kind of confused because I thought this would be sort of like a breather episode with everything going on, like the monster of the week. But hey, we got a brand new Zord combination. I guess that's kind of cool. Alright, episode 11, the final episode in this batch of episodes that they dropped on Netflix. So, this episode is a Harvey-focused episode, and he enters a music contest. So, it's finally cool to see Chance's musical abilities get put to screen in this episode, but also during the music show we get some comedic moments like Pop Pop playing the violin, sort of singing his cleaning jingle, and in the episode he plays the violin so hard he nearly assassinates one of the judges. So why isn't Pop Pop a ranger with moves like that? They should recruit him, I don't know. But in this episode, we see the arsehole musician back once again, who steals Harvey's song, and the reason why he steals it is because Harvey's been playing it around town all day, so it's kind of Harvey's own fault for singing it in public everywhere he goes that he eventually caught on and stole the song. Yes, stealing is wrong, but if he had such a good idea for a song, why did he go around playing it everywhere? I mean, maybe keep it a secret and then show your friends on the day you were going to play it, or maybe keep it a secret just a little bit longer. You wouldn't have this problem. But they get into a little bit of a kerfuffle where Harvey's got one more day to sort of come up with a new song. But while this is going on, we see the debut of Void King. That's right, Void Knight has been turned into Void King. And they use the Precious outfit from Re-Soldier, which is, I think, a female-based character, but seeing how the character doesn't look too girlish, I think they were able to get away with it with how it looks and its design and stuff like that. I think maybe they might have altered the suit a little bit for their own original footage, sort of getting away the breast area. I'm not entirely sure. I'll have to have side-by-side comparisons. But yeah, Void King's here, and Void King is kind of a beast when it comes to fighting. And the whole problem with this episode, it turns into a Zato-focused episode as well, where Void King is stealing Zato's moves, and it gives Zato a bit of a problem in battle. So he trains with Harvey to sort of figure out the weakness of the attack, and that's what happens in the episode. He trains with Harvey, finds out Void King's weakness, and defeats him. So that's kind of the episode we get for the final one. It's sort of like a problem of the week episode, but we do get some interesting stuff like Void King showing up, so they don't end these episodes on a crazy cliffhanger. But with this episode, the fight scenes were really cool, especially the Zato versus Void King. I think that was mostly all original footage, but what was also really cool was seeing Harvey use the Dino Night Morpher to morph into Zato's red form. And when I saw that happening, I thought Harvey would sort of turn into like the Black Dino Knight Key Ranger, but that doesn't happen. He just turns into another Red Ranger. But either way, it was really cool to see. But it's also really cool to see Harvey's dad Carlos hanging out with the gang now, and he did sort of get a comedic moment where he's like, let the adults handle this, and then he points fingers at the kids saying, hey, you stole my kid's song. So it's cool to see Izzy and Harvey's dad being one of the cool parents now and just hanging out with them. But overall, fun episode. I enjoyed it quite a fair bit, and the season, well, the batch of episodes didn't end on a crazy cliffhanger, so depending on how long we're waiting, we won't be like scratching our heads and wondering what could happen next. I think it left on a pretty strong note for these episodes. So that was my review of Power Rangers Dino Fury Season 2 Part 1. I know that this kind of format of me reviewing the episodes was very different from how I usually did it, but I thought I'd switch it up a bit and try something completely new. And if we get international spoilers, I might bring back the single episode reviews, but for this time, I wanted to try something different for once, and I really hope you guys enjoy it. So please give me your feedback on what you thought of this season, and how I handled my review for Season 2 Part 1 in the comment section down below. Also, I'm probably going to be making character breakdowns and more theory videos and stuff like that in the nearby future, so definitely stay tuned for them if you want to stick around for more Power Rangers Dino Fury related content. So, with that said, I'm going to bring this video to a close. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Special thanks to all the members such as Swagger4 and Andrew McCoyle, and the Power Bunny was a $30 member. If you want to get your name shouted out like these guys over here, hit the join button or become a Patreon supporter for special perks and stuff like that on the channel. With that said, I'm bringing this video to a close. Thanks for watching, have a wonderful day or night, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out, take care, bye.